Hello, my name's Finn. I'm 22 and I live in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of St. Louis, Missouri. It's nothing special. A leaky faucet, walls that could use a fresh coat of paint, and a view of the parking lot below. I share it with no one, which suits me fine. I work as a junior cleaner for a local junk removal company, the kind that hauls away old furniture, broken appliances, and whatever else people don't want cluttering their lives anymore. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I like the physical work. Keeps my mind off things. I ride an old bike to jobs most days, wearing faded t-shirts and jeans that have seen better times. People don't notice guys like me much, except when they need something heavy moved. I've gotten used to the sideways glances, the assumption that I'm just some kid scraping by, but I do my job right. Careful, respectful, no shortcuts. That morning started like any other. I woke up to my alarm buzzing at 6 a.m., threw on my work clothes, and grabbed a quick coffee from the gas station down the block. The team met at the warehouse, loaded the truck with bins and straps, and headed out for the day's gigs. Our first stop was an old apartment complex in the west side of town, the kind with peeling paint on the railings and creaky stairs. The client had called in a full clear-out. Everything goes. I didn't think much of it. These jobs were routine. People downsizing, moving, or dealing with loss. I'd seen it all. We pulled up around 9 a.m., the truck rumbling to a stop in the lot. I hopped out with the guys, two older dudes who'd been in the business forever, and we grabbed our gloves and carts. The apartment was on the second floor, number 204. The door was unlocked as promised. Inside, it was like stepping into a time capsule. Faded curtains, a worn couch sagging in the middle, shelves crammed with knickknacks, photo albums, and dusty vases. The air smelled musty, like old books and forgotten meals. No one was home, which was fine. Clients often left us to it. I started in the living room, sorting through piles of clothes and papers. The boss had said the owner wanted it all gone. No keepsakes, no second thoughts. But as I worked, something felt off. The place wasn't trashed. It was lived in, like someone had just stepped out for a bit. There were fresh flowers wilting in a vase on the kitchen table and a half-full mug of tea on the counter. I shook it off and kept going. About an hour in, while clearing a side table in the bedroom, I spotted a small wooden music box tucked behind some books. It was intricately carved, with a tiny ballerina inside that spun to a tinkling melody when you wound it up. The tune was off-key, like the mechanism was worn out, but there was something poignant about it. Engraved on the bottom was a faint outline of two figures, a mother and child. It didn't look like junk, it looked personal. My coworker Mike grabbed it without a second glance and tossed it toward the discard bin. "Everything goes, right?" He grunted. I caught it midair. "Hold on," I said quietly. "Maybe we should set this aside. Ask when she gets back." Mike shrugged and moved on, but I placed it on the windowsill, out of the way. Better safe than sorry. I'd learned that the hard way on past jobs. People regretted things later, and I didn't want to be the one who threw away someone's memories. That's when the door swung open. She walked in. Lena, the client. She was 39, though she carried herself like someone who'd seen more than her years. Dressed in a crisp blouse and slacks, like she was heading to an office after this. Her hair was pulled back neatly, but her eyes were tired, shadowed. She scanned the room quickly, nodding at our progress, then froze when she saw me standing by the window, the music box in my hand. I'd picked it up to wipe some dust off. Her face changed in an instant. "What the hell are you doing with that?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. She strode over, eyes blazing. "Who gave you permission to touch that?" I stammered, caught off guard. Ma'am, I was just setting it aside. Thought you might want to keep it. It looked important." "Important?" She snatched it from my hands, her fingers brushing mine roughly. "You have no idea what this is. This was my mother's, the only thing she left me that means anything." Her voice rose, echoing down the hallway. Neighbors peeked out from their doors, curious. Mike and the other guy paused, exchanging awkward glances. I felt my face heat up, a mix of embarrassment and frustration. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "Sorry?" She cut me off, her tone icy. "You're here to clean out junk, not rummage through my life. Do your job and throw things away, or is that too hard?" The words stung, like she saw me as some thief, not a guy trying to do right. I nodded, mumbling another apology, and backed away. We finished the job in silence, hauling boxes down the stairs. By the time we loaded the truck, my hands were shaking, not from the work, but from the humiliation. That evening, back at the warehouse, the boss pulled me aside. "Client called. Said you were messing with her stuff. We can't afford complaints like that, kid. One more and you're out." I nodded again, not arguing. What was the point? I rode my bike home in the fading light, the wind whipping against me. Sitting on my lumpy couch later, staring at the blank TV, I couldn't shake it. Why did her words hit so hard? Maybe because they echoed what I'd heard before. From landlords, from strangers who looked down on guys like me. Junk hauler, they'd say, like it was a synonym for worthless. That night, under the dim kitchen light, I wondered if that's all I'd ever be, someone people assumed the worst about. Little did I know that music box was just the start. A few days after that disastrous job, I tried to shake it off and get back to normal. Work was the same grind, hauling boxes, sorting recyclables, dodging the boss's gruff orders. But Lena's words kept replaying in my head like a bad loop. "Clean out junk," she'd said, like I was part of it. I buried myself in tasks, telling myself it was just one bad client. People like her, polished, successful, probably saw guys like me as disposable anyway. I rode my bike harder on the way home, pedaling until my legs burned, hoping to outrun the sting. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, while we were unloading at the warehouse, the phone rang in the office. The boss answered, his face tightening as he listened. He hung up and called me over, his voice low but sharp. "That woman from the apartment job? Says something's missing, a letter or whatever. She's pissed, thinks we took it." My stomach dropped. I hadn't touched anything personal beyond that music box, and even that was an accident. But the accusation hit like a punch. The boss eyed me suspiciously. "You sure you didn't pocket something? Clients like her can tank our reviews." I shook my head, feeling the heat rise in my chest. No way, I wouldn't. But he made me empty my pockets, check my backpack, even flip through the truck's glove compartment. Nothing. The other guys watched, awkward, like they half believed it too. Mike muttered something about kids these days, but I ignored it. Inside, though, it gnawed at me. Why me? Was it because I was the youngest, the one who looked like he needed the money most? I spent the rest of the shift in silence, my mind racing. If this blew up, I could lose the job, the only steady thing I had. That evening, alone in my apartment, I paced the tiny living room, the floor creaking under my feet. The walls felt closer than usual, the hum of the fridge too loud. I couldn't let this slide. It wasn't just about the letter. It was about proving I wasn't what she thought. A thief. A nobody. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, biking through the cooling dusk toward her apartment complex. The streets blurred by, streetlights flickering on as I pedaled. My heart pounded harder with each block. What if she slammed the door, called the cops? But I had to try. I arrived as the sun dipped low, chaining my bike to a post and climbing the stairs to her door. My hand hovered over the buzzer for what felt like minutes before I pressed it. Footsteps inside, then the door cracked open. Lena stood there, arms crossed, her expression a mix of surprise and irritation. "You? What do you want now?" I swallowed, my voice steadier than I felt. "About the letter, I didn't take it. If it's gone, maybe it got mixed up in the bins. I can help look." She stared at me, her eyes narrowing. For a second, I thought she'd soften, but then she let out a bitter laugh. "Help? Like you helped with my mom's music box? People in your line of work, hauling trash, think they can just take what they want?" The words landed like a slap. Trash hauler. It echoed every doubt I'd ever had about myself. Every time a landlord shorted my deposit, every glance from strangers assuming I was trouble. I felt small, exposed, my hands clenching at my sides. But I didn't snap back. Years of biting my tongue had taught me that. "I get it," I said quietly. "You don't trust me, but I'm not like that." She shook her head, dismissing me. "Just go. If it's not found, I'll handle it with your company." The door clicked shut, leaving me in the dim hallway, the sound ringing in my ears. I biked home slower, the weight of it all pressing down. That night, I barely slept, tossing on my thin mattress, replaying her laugh. The next morning, back at work, the boss was on edge, muttering about potential complaints. I threw myself into a new job, But my phone buzzed mid-afternoon, a text from Mike. "Hey kid, found something in that old bin from the apartment gig. A letter stuck in the cardboard. Looks personal." My pulse raced. It was the missing piece. I grabbed the letter from him at the warehouse, yellowed envelope, handwritten address to Lena, and shoved it in my pocket. Rain started falling as I left, fat drops splattering the pavement. But I didn't care. I hopped on my bike and pedaled straight to her complex, the storm soaking me through. By the time I got there, it was pouring. Water streamed down my face, my clothes clinging like a second skin. I stood at her door, shivering, but I couldn't bring myself to knock. What if she accused me again? What if this made it worse? I leaned against the wall, the letter safe in my zipped pocket, waiting for… what? A sign? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the rain drumming relentlessly. Thunder rumbled in the distance. I told myself I'd leave soon, but deep down I knew I couldn't. Not until she knew the truth, not just about the letter, but about me. Finally, the door opened. Lena stepped out, probably heading somewhere, and froze when she saw me. "What the… You've been out here this whole time?" I nodded, pulling the soggy envelope from my pocket. "It's yours. We found it in a bin. I didn't take it." She took it carefully, her fingers brushing the wet paper, her expression shifting from annoyance to something softer, almost regretful. Rain dripped from my hair into my eyes, but I didn't move. In that moment, standing there drenched and exposed, I felt a strange vulnerability, like maybe this was the start of proving something to her and to myself. She took the envelope from my hand, her fingers trembling slightly as she recognized it. The rain continued to pour outside, a steady drum against the windows, but inside, the air felt thick with unspoken tension. Lena stared at the wet paper for a long moment, then looked up at me, her eyes wide. Where did you find this?" Her voice was softer now, not the sharp edge from before. I wiped water from my forehead, shivering in my soaked clothes. "It was stuck in one of the bins at the warehouse. My coworker found it this afternoon. I came straight here." I didn't add that I'd biked through the storm or that I'd waited outside her door like some fool. It didn't seem important. What mattered was that she knew I hadn't taken it, that I wasn't the person she'd accused me of being. She stepped back, gesturing vaguely. "Come in. You're drenched." I hesitated, but the chill was seeping into my bones, so I followed her inside. The apartment looked different now, less cluttered since we'd cleared it out, but still echoing with emptiness. The music box sat on the kitchen table, like a sentinel. She set the letter down beside it and disappeared into another room, returning with a towel. "Here," she said, handing it to me. I dried my face and hair as best I could, feeling awkward standing there dripping on her floor. Lena sat at the table, carefully opening the envelope. Her hands were steady, but I saw the way her breath caught as she unfolded the paper inside. She read it silently, her eyes tracing the words. I didn't need to see it to know what it said. Something personal, something that had broken her when it went missing. After a minute, she folded it back up and pressed it to her chest, closing her eyes. When she opened them again, they were glistening. This was from my mom. She wrote it in her last days. I thought I'd lost it forever. I nodded, not sure what to say. "I'm glad we found it." She looked at me then, really looked, as if seeing me for the first time. "I accused you. I called your company, said someone stole it. I'm sorry. I was so angry, so scared. It wasn't about you." The apology hung there, unexpected. I'd come ready for more anger, more dismissal, but not this. I sat down across from her, the towel draped over my shoulders. "It's okay, I get it. Things like that, they're not just stuff." She shook her head, wiping at her eyes. "No, it's not okay. You didn't deserve that. I lashed out because losing her still feels raw. 3 months ago, she passed. Cancer. She was everything to me, my rock, my only family. This apartment was hers. I moved in to take care of her at the end. Now it's just me and all these reminders. I hired you guys to clear it out because I couldn't do it myself. But seeing you with the music box, it felt like you were taking her away all over again." Her voice cracked on the last words and she looked away toward the window where rain streaked the glass. "I'd listened. the sound of the storm filling the pauses. I'd never been great with words, especially heavy ones like this, but something in her story tugged at me. My grandma raised me, I said quietly, surprising myself. She passed when I was 15, left me with nothing but a few old photos and a watch that doesn't work anymore. I keep it in a drawer, can't throw it out. Lena turned back, her expression softening. You get it then. That fear of letting go. Yeah, I replied. People think it's just junk, but it's not. It's pieces of who we were. We sat there for a while, the silence not uncomfortable. She stood up eventually, moving to the kitchen. Let me make you some tea. You must be freezing. I nodded, watching as she filled a kettle and set it on the stove. The apartment felt warmer now, less like a job site and more like a place where real life happened. She brought over 2 mugs, steaming with chamomile, and we sipped them slowly. The rain eased a bit, turning to a gentle patter. As the tea warmed me from the inside, she opened up more. Mom was strong, you know. She worked 2 jobs to raise me after Dad left. Never complained. That letter, she wrote it when she knew she didn't have long. Told me not to be so tough all the time, to let people in. I guess I haven't been great at that. She smiled faintly, a sad curve to her lips. And here I am, yelling at a kid who's just doing his job. I'm not a kid, I said, half joking, but there was an edge to it. And you're not wrong to protect what's yours. She met my eyes. No, but I was wrong about you. Thank you for bringing it back, for waiting out there. Not many would. I shrugged, but inside the knot of resentment I'd carried since our first encounter started to loosen. Anyone would have done it. Not anyone, she said softly. We talked a little more. About nothing heavy, just the weather, the neighborhood, how the city had changed. It was easy, like we'd skipped the awkward phase. By the time the rain stopped, my clothes were mostly dry, and I felt lighter than I had in days. As I stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Finn, right? If you ever need anything, a reference or whatever, let me know. I smiled for the first time that night. Thanks, and take care of that music box. She nodded, her hand lingering on the doorknob. I will. Biking home under the clearing sky, the street slick and shining, I replayed the evening. Her apology, her story, it humanized her, turned her from the angry client into someone real, someone hurting like me. For the first time, I didn't feel like just the junk hauler. And as the cool air rushed past, I wondered if this was the end of it, or if something had just begun. After that rainy night, things shifted between us in ways I couldn't quite explain. I'd left her apartment feeling lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Not just from returning the letter, but from hearing her story and sharing a piece of mine. The next day, my phone buzzed while I was at work, sorting through a pile of discarded electronics at a new site. It was a text from Lena. Thanks again for last night. Hope you didn't catch a cold. Simple, but it caught me off guard. I replied quickly, no worries. Glad you're okay. From there, the messages trickled in, nothing heavy at first. She'd ask about my day, how the job was going. I'd tell her about a tough haul or a funny client story. It felt easy, natural, like we'd skipped the awkward getting-to-know-you phase. We started meeting up occasionally, always casual. A coffee at a diner near her work or a walk around the block after my shift. She'd talk about her job managing the electronics store, dealing with pushy customers, hitting sales targets, and I'd listen, nodding along. It was strange at first. She was older, more put together, with a life that seemed worlds apart from mine. But she didn't make me feel small. If anything, she treated me like an equal, asking my opinion on things like whether she should switch suppliers or how to handle a difficult employee. You're good at seeing the practical side, she'd say, and I'd feel a quiet pride I hadn't known in a while. One evening about a week later, my phone rang while I was fixing dinner. A frozen pizza in my tiny oven. It was Lena, her voice strained. Finn, sorry to bother you, but I twisted my ankle at work. It's swelling up. Think I need to get it checked. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys. I'll come get you. Where are you? She protested at first, saying she'd call a cab, but I insisted. 20 minutes later, I pulled up in my beat-up truck outside her store. She hobbled out, leaning on a coworker, her face pale but trying to smile. I helped her into the passenger seat, careful not to jostle her leg. At the ER, we waited for hours in the fluorescent lit waiting room, surrounded by coughing kids and tired families. She winced every so often, but we talked to pass the time. About her mom again, how she'd loved gardening and used to grow tomatoes on the balcony. I shared more about my grandma, how she'd taught me to fix things around the house when I was a kid. That's why I like this job, I admitted. Feels like putting pieces back together, even if it's just junk. Lena looked at me thoughtfully. It's not junk to everyone. When the doctor finally called her in, I stayed put, flipping through an old magazine without really reading it. She emerged an hour later on crutches, ankle wrapped in a brace, sprained but nothing broken. Thanks for waiting, she said as I helped her to the truck. No one's done that for me in a long time. Driving back, the city lights blurring past, I felt something stir, a warmth I hadn't expected. But the next day, reality crept in. While dropping off some bins at the warehouse, I overheard the guys joking about fancy clients. One mentioned Lena's complex, chuckling, "Heard she's hanging with the cleanup kid now? What, slumming it?" They didn't know it was me, but the words hit hard. Later, biking through the neighborhood, I caught whispers from a couple of residents outside her building. That manager lady with the young trash guy doesn't match. It stung, reminding me of the gap between us, her polished life, my rough edges. Lena must have sensed it too. That evening, she texted, "Hey, about us hanging out. Maybe we should cool it. People talk." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Part of me agreed. It was safer, less complicated. "Yeah, probably," I replied, but it felt wrong, like giving up on something before it even started. The days after were quiet, no texts, no calls. I threw myself into work, hauling heavier loads, staying late to avoid thinking about it. But the silence gnawed at me. Was it the age thing, the job, or just me not fitting into her world? Then, one night around midnight, my phone lit up. It was Lena. "Can't sleep. Keep thinking about Mom. You up?" I was, wide awake on my couch, staring at the ceiling. "Yeah, want company?" Her reply came quick. "If you're okay with it." I drove over, the streets empty under the street lamps. She let me in, her face drawn, eyes red-rimmed. We sat on the couch, the music box on the coffee table between us. "I miss her so much," she whispered. "And now, with you, I feel like I don't fit. I'm older, set in my ways. What would people say?" I took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine. "You don't have to fit with anyone. Just be you. That's enough for me." She squeezed back, her voice soft. "I'm scared we're too different." The words hung there, vulnerable. But in that moment, holding her as she leaned against me, the differences didn't matter. We stayed like that, talking until the early hours, the apartment filling with a quiet peace I'd never known. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider in her life, or mine. After that night on her couch, where we'd bared our fears and held on through the quiet, things between Lena and me began to unfold in small, deliberate ways. It wasn't a rush of grand gestures or declarations, no fireworks, no sweeping changes. Instead, it was like the rain had washed away the barriers, leaving room for something real to grow. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from her. "Coffee after your shift?" "My treat." I stared at it for a second, a smile creeping in despite myself. "Sounds good," I replied. From there, the distance we'd tried to impose melted away. We didn't label it, didn't force it. We just let it be. We started spending more time together, always starting simple. I'd swing by her apartment after work, still in my dusty clothes, and she'd have tea waiting. One afternoon, she mentioned the old flower trellis in the courtyard below her building, something her mom had set up years ago, now overgrown with weeds. "I keep meaning to fix it," she said, staring out the window. Without thinking, I offered, "I can help. I'm good with my hands." She looked at me, hesitant at first, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it this weekend." That Saturday, we met in the courtyard, armed with gloves, soil, and a few packets of seeds she'd picked up. The sun was out, warm on our backs as we knelt in the dirt. I cleared the weeds while she loosened the soil, our hands brushing occasionally. We talked as we worked, about her mom's favorite flowers, how she'd plant them every spring. "Roses," Lena said softly. She loved the red ones. Said they reminded her of life, beautiful but thorny. I nodded, digging a hole for the first plant. My grandma had a garden too, nothing fancy, just veggies, taught me patience. By the end of the day, the trellis was revived, vines starting to climb. We stepped back, admiring it, our clothes smudged with earth. As dusk fell, we went inside. Lena wound up the music box on the table, and its off-key melody filled the room. Familiar now, less haunting. She sat beside me on the couch, our shoulders touching. I haven't listened to this without crying in months, she admitted. I turned to her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. I don't want to see you cry anymore, I said quietly, meaning every word. She reached for my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. And I don't want to be alone anymore. The words hung there, simple and true. We didn't kiss or make promises. We just sat, the music winding down, the weight of our past feeling a little lighter. Over the next weeks, we fell into a rhythm. I helped her sort through the remaining boxes in the apartment, not throwing everything away like she'd planned, but keeping the pieces that mattered. A photo album of her mom, a few old letters, even some knickknacks that sparked stories. I thought clearing it all would help me move on, she said one evening, folding a scarf her mom had knitted. But maybe holding on to some things is okay. I agreed, sharing how I'd kept my grandma's broken watch, winding it even though it never ticked right. The apartment transformed slowly, not empty anymore, but lived in, with space for new memories. Of course, the whispers didn't stop. Neighbors glanced our way when I'd visit, murmuring about the manager and that young cleanup guy. At work, the guys ribbed me if they saw me texting during breaks. Got a hot date with some client? I brushed it off, but it gnawed at me sometimes. The age gap, the differences in our lives. She ran a store, made decisions that affected dozens. I hauled trash, barely scraping by. One night, over takeout in her kitchen, I voiced it. What if they're right? We don't match on paper. Lena set down her fork, her eyes steady. Paper doesn't matter. You see me, the real me. That's more than matching. Still, the doubts lingered until one evening that sealed it. I'd had a rough day, a client yelled at me over a scratched table we hadn't even touched, and I showed up at her door unannounced, frustrated, and tired. She let me in without a word, made coffee, and listened as I vented. When I finished, she stood and pulled something from a drawer, a spare key to her apartment. If you want it, she said, holding it out. This isn't just my place anymore, it's ours if that's what you need. I took it, the metal cool in my palm, feeling the gravity of it. Are you sure? She nodded. I've spent too long shutting people out. With you, I don't want to. That key changed everything, even if nothing looked different from the outside. We didn't announce it, didn't move in together right away. But it was a promise, of presence, of choosing each other despite the odds. Happiness came in the quiet moments, sharing meals, listening to the music box on lazy evenings, watching the flowers bloom on the trellis we'd planted. The whispers faded into background noise. We didn't care. For the first time, I felt like I belonged, not as the junk hauler, but as someone seen and valued. Love, I realized, doesn't need to be perfect or approved. It just needs two people willing to hold on, to not discard what's worth keeping. And in Lena, I'd found that someone who made me want to build, not just clear away.